is Anatomy Phys, the integumentary system. All right, I went ahead and downloaded this picture from your book so that way we could kind of refer to it along with some of the others. We talked a little bit that there are basically three layers. You've got the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. During our bell ringer, which two did we say were part of the skin system? Right, the epidermis and dermis. And then they say that the hypodermis is really not part of it, but we study it with it, so I don't know why they separate it out. The epidermis is separated, stratum corneum and stratum basal. Stratum basal, like the basement, is along the bottom. Now notice here, stratum basal is going to wrap all the way around excuse me, the hair root and the glands here. All right? So those stratum basal cells there literally wrap all the way down and around, and that is what your hair comes out of. That's where the origin of your hair is. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. We'll get to the boring notes, and then we'll get to the cool pictures. Cutaneous membrane, or called the integument. Characteristics: stratified squamous epithelium. What does that look like? Kind of squished flat and then layered, right? Okay, so the squished flat and the layered from our tissues. This forms your hair follicles and your sebaceous glands. You've got protective functions. The protective functions of the epidermis, it shields moisture, so that way the moisture that you have down below in the dermis and the hypodermis, it keeps the water loss. When it's not broken, it's also a protective measure. The protective measure keeps bacteria out. Stratum basal is the bottom of the layer of the epidermis. It is constantly dividing, and it's producing new cells that are pushed upward. All right, that's fine. So, if it's constantly dividing, is stratum corneum constantly dividing, or is stratum basal constantly dividing? Stratum basal is the one that's constantly dividing. That's where the new cell growth is going on. Let's look back up here. So this area in here is the area that's going to be constantly growing. Well, look, it's close to the blood supply. It's going to be the one that's closest up to the blood supply. You have to have that blood supply for those cells to divide. The further away it gets from the blood supply, the cell starts dying because it loses. That's the reason all your cells slough off. Does that make sense? What? Okay, cool. All right, so we've got blood supply. Now, on the blood supply, it's not actually pushed up into the stratum basal. It's right up to the edge of the stratum basal. So your blood supply is all in your dermis, but it doesn't reach up into your epidermis. Okay? But it's up close, real close then, to the stratum basal layer. This could be your stratum basal, and then this would be stratum corneum. Since it is down lower, then you've got your dermis down here, and this is where all your blood supply is, but yet it travels up right up to the base of it. The Langerhans cells, those are macrophagy. Those are white blood cells that will travel up, and they are there in the stratum basal too. Anybody got any questions on that one? All right, pigments are also located. This is a real good picture here. Pigments are also located. Let's see if I can make it a little bit larger. In the stratum basal, You'll know they are located in what's called melanocytes. Here's the melanocyte right in here, and it's right along that basement layer of the stratum basal. Notice how close up your blood vessels go. Well, your melanocytes are actually cells that produce pigment. All right, that's where we get the pigment for freckles. That's where you get pigment that causes your skin to tan. All right, the sun ends up triggering it. All right, they're located deeper in the epidermis and produced in the hypodermis. They produce melanin, the pigment responsible for skin color. Everybody has about the same amount of melanocytes, but the coloring differentiation between people is due to how much melanin is produced. So everybody has about the same amount of melanin cells, but some people have a lot more melanin that's being produced. It protects the skin from UV rays, and that's what causes toning or freckles. This is a picture of an albino with the red eye, very, very blonde. Albinism is the lack of the ability to produce melanin. All right, so when there's no melanin at all that can be produced, that's when you have albinoism. No, it's not fatal. There's no pigment. There's no pigment in skin, hair, or eyes. Keratin is found in the palms and soles of feet and causes yellowish hue in Asians. So keratin is a kind of pigment, and that, when it forms, it gives that yellowish look, and that's what we have. You know, a lot of times on the bottom of your feet, how they look, they can tend to look more yellow. That's just because we have keratin pigments in there.
How come the eyes are red though?
Because actually you see in the blood vessels dilate, that's why the eyes are red. You can actually see, since you don't have the coloring, we're actually just seeing the blood back in the back.
Man, I wish I was albino now.
Isn't that cool? Hemoglobin, this is what the hemoglobin, whenever your blood vessels are closer to the surface, when you're real white, that's what causes the pinkish hue and stuff, is the actual hemoglobin. That's where you get your tints of that.